Chapter 17, Part 1. This is the 17th and 18th century, also known in Europe as the Age of Kings. We get into exploration as well. We've been doing some exploration, the Europeans have, all over the world, and there's been a lot of colonialism in South America, North America, and other parts, Asia and Africa, all over. But really, we're focused on Europe at this point in time. We're going to look at the Baroque and the Rococo. So two things that we see are genre painting and secularism. Secularism, secular versus sacred, where you look at sacred art. We still have sacred art, but we do have more images of, or more paintings of the average person. Excuse me. So our Baroque is contrasting with the Renaissance. It's not as how you say, balanced and stable. It's more dynamic, and there's going to be more vivid coloring and more shadows, darks, and lights. So these artists here: Bernini, Gentileschi, Caravaggio, Rubens, Poussin, Velasquez, and Rembrandt are our main guys. Rubens and Rembrandt really epitomize the Baroque in a lot of ways. Caravaggio and Gentileschi, Bernini as well, Poussin and Velasquez in a slightly different way. We're going to look at that. So Baroque art in general is ornamented. It's highly decorative. So it's theatrical. It's dynamic. So you hear the term in common usage now to sort of say, oh, it was Baroque, like it was over the top. It was just too much. So in the Baroque era, too much is not enough. More. It's really very elaborate and complex. So let's look at one of our first ones of a sculpture in the Cornaro Chapel from Bernini. So this is really amazing because in some ways, in some textbooks, this is one of the first installations, or it's the sort of precursor of installation art. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but he does use the windows up here to have, to mimic the light, and I believe there's windows on this side, coming down, and these rays of light made out of bronze or brass here are sort of combined, and then the clouds up here are painted. So he's combining the architectural element, this niche here, and all these carved elements to sort of frame the sculpture, and he's also including some painting, and he's including sculpture. So really this is a sculpture for the most part, what we're looking at, but all the stuff surrounding it is a new way to think about sculpture, okay? New way to think about sculpture and the environment it's in. Because prior to this, you can kind of see this sort of framing here, behind here, you just have things in a niche, and I think if we look back into the Renaissance and you see that first image of St. Mark, see if I can pull it up quickly. If you look at that and you think, how is that in a niche, like for people to see? Yeah, Donatello's St. Mark 16.1 in 1411, 200 years earlier. He's just in a decorated niche. He's outside, but just the same. He's not got all these other materials happening. So it is quite complex that Bernini is using multiple materials. One kind of stone here, the marble for these two figures. There are these rods coming down here. So that's first of its kind. It's very unusual. And I'm going to back up again, and you can kind of see this in the context that it's in. So this sort of three-dimensional piece is here, but look at this elaborate marble and all this ornate decorative stuff around here, gold leaf. There's all kinds of shiny metallic things. There's white marble, but it's all carved out. It's just a lot of different things happening here. Then we're going to get into some paintings. This is Judith and Maidservant with the Head of Holofernes. She does a couple of works on this same subject. And we're going to see some dramatic lighting called tenebrism, when you see lights and darks. The Baroque, like if you're ever guessing if it's Renaissance or Baroque, if it's got this much solid black in it, likely it is Baroque, right? That's much more dramatic. And then the lights are here. So that's really important to show out this intensity of this scene with this harsh lighting. Or in a way, I mean, it's supposedly a single candlelight, but that's one strong candle, really. But you can also see the chiaroscuro going on here, where there is her leg. You can really see it through here. The folds of the fabric are really defined. Her arms just really three-dimensionalized here. She's a student of Caravaggio's, so she takes on this, style of painting with the three-dimensional chiaroscuro and the harsh light and dark, bright colors, and then rich colors, and then a lot of black. Now this is, the subject is Holofernes. He is killed by Judith, and her maidservant helps, so she slices off his head while they're sort of on the bed, so to speak, and she does away with him. So it's a powerful image for her, and she does this in a couple different versions. And it is one of those things because she's a female painter in a very masculine world in the Baroque era. Anytime in the history of painting, really up until the late 20th century, very difficult, for women to get a lot of training, but even more so now at this point in time. But she does learn, and she does portray this scene of a woman overpowering a man. So it's a very early sort of a feminist piece, if you will, although feminism doesn't happen for 340 years. So Caravaggio, he is the king, I would say, of the chiaroscuro, and he's influenced by some other Baroque artists, and he likes the dramatic lighting. And so in this case, he really goes he goes pretty far with this. So previous to this, when we saw Christ figures or the entombment or the putting him on the cross or different things like that, Christ was usually kind of sort of semi-standing or laying down or not muscle. The musculature wasn't activated. But look at our muscular Christ here. He looks a little thin, but he's quite strong. And the S curve here, the idea that he is dynamic and moving. He's got some angles to him. He's not stayed and balanced and quiet, if that makes sense. So this is the sort of action painting. A lot of things happening here. The hands, look at those hands against the blacks back there. It's very dramatic. The faces are just tremendous, detail and so on. And look at his shading here and the three-dimensionality of that arm. It's just gorgeous. And the legs here, everything is just so beautifully rendered, thoughtful, but it's a moment of action. It's not past the point of the action. We're in the middle of it. We're seeing an action style of a painting. We're going to get into Rubens as well. Same thing with the raising of the cross. He's going to get into this S curve and this excitement, I think, more so in the Rubens piece. We'll look at that. Flemish painter. Of course, Caravaggio is our Italian friend. And then Poussin. So, height of Baroque here. This just couldn't get any more Baroque, as they say. And really wild, churning, just twisting, churning Christ figure. Look at all the effort of these guys lifting him up. Super, giant muscles. And again, remember, same as mannerism, these guys are taking from Michelangelo's figures. That's who's influencing this style of painting, this incredible buff, folks. I don't know how many people really look like this at this time, but this is the ideal, and so that's how we're portraying them. At this point, Christ is likely emaciated in reality and near death, but they put him into a stronger position here, or Rubens puts him in a stronger position, I should say, and has him kind of twisting in his S curve, Very emotional scene, pulling on the rope here. And look how this elbow is coming right out at us. You know, the picture plane is almost being punctured. This thing is coming right out at us. So we're really involved here. It's not some distant, quiet scene pushed back into space. A lot of these are in intimate, shorter spaces. We're not seeing all that perspective and space defined very well. There's a lot of just dark, background. And in this case, we don't go very far, even though this is a hill, and there's some sky back there. We don't really get back there where our attention is focused in the foreground or middle ground right here. Okay, so Poussin's very different take on the Baroque. And you could see where, if you want to say, the precursor to neoclassicism. This is not neoclassicist, although, you could argue that this is a forerunner. So what you see in the 17th and 18th century, and a little bit toward the end of the Renaissance, is a lot of overlap of styles. There's a lot of turmoil. We have the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation with the Catholic Church. All these different countries are evolving and experiencing things at a different time. So this is a French painter. Of course, the heart of the Renaissance is really Italy. And then I would say, secondary would be Flanders and